Hi everyone, my name is Joanna. Thanks for checking out my channel. Today I want to share the story of how my husband and I finally figured out how to budget together. I'm going to spend a few minutes kind of telling you a little bit about our history and how we got to this point, and then I'm going to share with you some tips that finally helped us get on the same page and work together for our financial goals. If you're interested in just the tips, I'll put a little timestamp here of when you can come back and join us. Otherwise, we're gonna get started. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about us. Okay, so my husband Liam and I have been married for over 5 years now. And this past year, we welcomed our first child. He's 9 months now, which is crazy, but we love him so much. So when we first got married, we did not really have a budget. And it's really hard to admit that because it seems like one of those things you should figure out, especially, when you're getting married. But neither one of us had a budgeting system on our own when we were single. And then when we came together, it was just kind of a mess because we really had nothing to go on. Now, we had made attempts to try budgets as young adults, but we had never really stuck to anything. So we didn't really have, a go-to method to bring to our marriage. Hi, buddy. You want to come say hi? Hi. Hi. Hello. So in all honesty, when we first got married, finances were a source of conflict for us. We also hadn't taken the time to really sit down and get on the same page as each other. We knew that we both had student debts, but we didn't know the exact amounts, and we didn't have a plan of attack of how we were going to, tackle the debts. We also didn't really know about savings accounts or what those looked like, so we weren't really putting any money aside for savings. We would just get a bill, try to pay it off with the money we got for paychecks, and then wait for the next thing to happen. I don't know if you can relate to us in this way, but we also have two different personalities, which is very common in a lot of relationships. But I was the type that wanted to talk about it and tackle it, every single day. And yes, there were times at, 10 p.m. where I'd had a thought and had to talk about it at that point. And I've learned, as most of you probably know already, 10 p.m. is not a great time to try and tackle a difficult subject. My husband, on the other hand, was a little bit more on the avoiding side, when he'd rather just put off the conversations because it gave him a lot of stress. We had to come together and figure out how these two, quirky personalities were going to work together. So probably wasn't until 3-ish years into our marriage that we really figured out how to get on the same page as each other. And I really want to share those with you. One, because I am starting to make budgeting videos now and I really, really enjoy it, but I never want to come across as thinking that, we have it all together, because we don't. It can be really intimidating talking about budgeting, but the more friends and family we talk to, we realize that everybody is just learning. And, it looks like everyone has everything together, but they don't. And I don't want that to come across for us. This is what Theo's doing. Hi, Theo. And the second reason is because I do actually think these tips will help. So if you are like us and you kind of need to get on the same page, or maybe you just need some refreshers, then I think these tips will help. So the first thing we did was try to find some common ground by talking about our goals. Now, this can really help for people who aren't really motivated to budget or to pay off debt, whatever situation you're in. It can really help to have something that you are excited to work towards. So for me, it's paying off debt. I get really excited about that. I know that's not for everyone. For my husband, it's getting excited about saving for a house. But we had to share those with each other and realize that we were motivated by different things. Our budget then had to reflect both of our goals, and both of us had to see, the end in sight for these goals. We now have almost, not exactly down to the date, but down to the month of when we want to hit these goals, when our debt's going to be paid off, and when we will have our down payment saved up for our house. So whatever that is, it can be anything. Maybe it's something a little bit more short term. Maybe you want to buy a pool. Well, that can be long term. I'm thinking like above ground pool, a little more inexpensive. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's a weekend trip you want to take, or maybe a longer trip. Maybe it's saving up for a new vehicle. Whatever it is, it's really important that you can see your money working towards those goals, and that both people in the relationship see their goals being met with the budget that you create. Try budgeting for an entire year at once. When we first started out, we were budgeting each month. So we would use an app. There's a couple that we've tried that worked pretty well. And we would, plan out our monthly spending. And that worked well to start because we needed a place to start and something small that we could be consistent with. However, we have started budgeting for the entire year, these last 2 years now, and it has made a huge difference. We found the channel called One Big Happy Life, and I'm going to link them down below because they have a free budget template that you can use to see your entire year at once. Our month-to-month budgets are often fairly similar. We're paying for our mortgage or for our rent every month. We're paying for our phones, the water, the heating bill, Wi-Fi, whatever it is that your family spends money on, it's likely going to look the same month to month. So planning that out was actually a lot easier than we thought. The benefit to seeing the whole year is that we could see our goals being met. At the bottom of this specific template, which I totally recommend you try, is a section for debt. So we could list all of our debts and see month to month, we could see them going down and actually see the end point of when certain debts would be paid off. And that's the same how savings work. You could see that at the end of next year, the end of this year, whatever you're budgeting for, this is how much we're gonna have in savings. That was incredibly motivating to both my husband and I because it just gave us a purpose. It gave us a reason to stick to a budget every month because we knew, okay, by Christmas, we're gonna have this much paid off or this much saved. So I definitely recommend doing your budget for the entire year. Okay, my last tip is to start having budget meetings. Now, this is what we call them. You can come up with a different name for it if you like, but this is a specific time every week that we carve out to go over our budget. I would first recommend having an initial budget meeting, and this is where you can discuss those things we talked about earlier, like your goals, what's motivating you, things like that. We found that setting aside that initial time made it more official. This is the time we're gonna sit down and do this. Just like an appointment that you would put in your calendar for the week, you carve out that time and it's dedicated towards working on your budget. I've heard the recommendation that if finances is something you and your spouse struggle with, to make your first budget meeting at a restaurant or something public because you're gonna be on your best behavior out in public, and I think you're gonna get a lot more done. Quick plug in here, and I don't want to gloss over this, but I do want to highlight the importance of bringing in a third party if you need it. There's no shame in seeing a trusted friend, a pastor, a counselor, someone that's going to help both of you communicate and work on your finances. My husband and I didn't use this tool, but that's not to say we're not going to do that in the future. We're always open to getting help for whatever it is. And I want to encourage you that if this is an area that you have tried to work on for years and you just haven't been able to get anywhere, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going to get some help. I think it's actually brave because you're recognizing this is something that you need help with, and more times than not, it's going to benefit you and your relationship. So quick plug in there to know that these tips are, I think, helpful, but these don't replace going to see professional help. And I highly encourage you to do that if you think that will help your marriage. Okay, back to budget meetings. So you have that initial budget meeting where maybe you order in food or you go out for dinner, you kind of make it an event, something special, and you just have an honest conversation about your finances. The weekly budget meetings are meant to help maintain the budget that you create. At first, it probably took us half an hour to sit down and make sure that the bills were being paid that week. We were on track with our debt and savings goals, but we are getting to a point where we can do it in 5-10 minutes because, like I said before, month to month, things don't change a whole lot. So as you start doing it, it just gets easier. We just sit down, we make sure, we're not doing something else, we're not watching TV or on our phones, but we just go quickly. Okay, what do we need to do this week? Are we hitting our monthly goals for savings, budgets? Is there anything we need to adjust? Things like that. Maybe there's a surprise, something happens with the car, and we can discuss it then. But this has worked so well. Again, like I said before, my husband and I have different personalities, and when it comes to finances, it was really highlighted. Now, you might be able to relate to this as well, but if you have two different personalities in your relationship, like most of us do, the budget meetings work so well. Here's why. If you're like me, as soon as you think of something, you want to talk about it, and it can be at any time. Like I said, sometimes it was 10 p.m. and we had to talk about something, and that usually, I'm gonna say 99% of the time, probably 100% of the time, just it's not a good idea. Don't have important conversations at 10 p.m. For my husband, who got a little more stressed when we talked about money, when I would just, random times throughout the day want to just talk about it, he wouldn't be prepared. He wouldn't be ready to, add to the conversation, and he'd just be caught off guard. So what the budget meetings did for both of us is that it gave us that time that we knew this is the time that's dedicated to our budget. So if you're like me and you just want to make sure that your thoughts are getting out and being heard, I knew every single week I have a chance to talk to my husband about something. So if something came up, I knew I just had to wait a couple days, that there was a set time for that and that we were prioritizing it. For my husband, it gave him like a time on the calendar to know, okay, this time rolls around, I'm going to make sure that I'm ready, I'm prepared to sit down and contribute to our budget. Otherwise, he doesn't have to worry about it throughout the week. We go on with our life, and every week he just knows that he needs to be ready for the conversation. It really helps both of us, and if you can relate to us on that, I really think it will help you as well. Okay, so there you go. There's a little bit more about us, and I just want to kind of normalize the idea that we all have to learn about everything in life, but about finances, no one's born knowing how to do these things. We have to learn, and we have to be encouraging to each other. So please know that you are not alone if this is something that maybe you struggle with on your own, or you struggle with in a relationship with your spouse. So know that it can get better. I do think that these things are going to help, but also never be afraid to go and get a help from a third party. This is my little boys down here. Okay, like I said, you got this. You can do it. I hope that this was helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.